What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And today, recapping day 5 of training camp practice for the New York Giants. Today was the first padded practice. That's right. The Giants put the pads on. Things got a little bit more physical, and things got hot. It was a scorcher over in New Jersey today, and the Giants had to take several breaks throughout the practice to mitigate the heat. Also, having not only water breaks, Alex, but watermelon breaks. That was an interesting development today at training camp. They were stopping and going over to the sideline and putting down some watermelons. So happy summer, good summer vibes, I guess, over at Giants training camp for this hot padded practice. Obviously, putting the pads on and all that added weight is sure to create some dehydration for the players, but no real injuries today. Bryce Ford-Wheaton, as I mentioned in yesterday's training camp takeaways, did go down with a major injury. The update on that, it was a torn Achilles. He's done for the year. Very unfortunate development. Really feel bad for Bryce Ford-Wheaton, who just can't catch a break. Sending him prayers. But the update on that is that the Giants did go ahead and re-sign Gunnar Olszewski today to add a little bit of special teams depth. But other than that, we'll go ahead now and dive into the takeaways from the practice itself. First one with pads. Alex, how are you feeling today, my friend? And, what are your thoughts on today's practice with the Giants putting on the pads?
I'm feeling pretty good, man. This is a good day. The Giants, everyone's kind of talking about it. The vibes are different. The analysts, the haters. You always know when things are going a little bit better when all the haters start to come out and talk smack about us from outside of our own fan base. It's funny because you can tell when Giants fans things are not going well because the fan base goes crazy. But when things are going well, everybody else goes crazy. So I feel pretty good about where we are right now in the offseason. Obviously, lots of pros and cons. I will say this, and I tweeted it before. The rookies are getting a lot of really positive attention so far. And to me, that's a really good sign. Anthony, you're a big proponent of BPA. The Giants, back-to-back years, have gone BPA for the most part. And Abdul Carter looks like an absolute menace. Brian Burns was like, I don't even need to talk about him. You guys can see him. Carter's been talking about getting into pads for a couple days now. Guy's going to be an absolute weapon for us. It's going to be such a fun season to watch him, if anything. I think he's going to be fun, especially in the NFC East when we have a lot of mobile quarterbacks that we have to manage. So, Cam SkatteBOOM, we'll talk about him as well. He has been on fire. I mean, he looks like a starting caliber running back. We all knew this when he was drafted out of Arizona State. One of the best collegiate seasons we've ever seen from a running back. 1,712 yards and 21 rushing touchdowns, not to mention he's looked fantastic as a pass catcher. So, right now the rookies are shining. The game is starting to slow down for Jackson Dart, and that's what you want to see, instant impact rookies. So I do really think that that's a positive to take away, but I'm excited to kind of talk about the positives and, definitely the trends that are unfolding right now in Giants camp. And so far, so good. I'm pretty happy with what I'm hearing.
I'm really happy with what I'm hearing, especially about these rookies, as you just mentioned. I mean, Abdul Carter's been a standout performer at every single training camp practice. I've seen constant clips of him using that spin move to get to the quarterback, using his bend and his dip around the edge, a lot of speed. And now that the pads are on, I'm excited to see more clips where he can not only use his speed and athleticism, but also use his power and his strength. So that's going to be a lot of fun to see. I also mentioned in yesterday's takeaways that we haven't heard a lot about the running backs because when you don't have the pads on, you can't really simulate a proper running game. But with the pads on today, the Giants ran the ball a lot more during the 11-on-11 drills, and it created some opportunities for these running backs to stand out, namely Cam SkatteBOOM, as you just mentioned, Alex. He had a great day today. He had several big runs, including one of 30-plus yards, and he even had a big reception down the sideline delivered from Jackson Dart. So getting involved, as I've said before, very versatile player, getting involved on the receiving end of things and as a running back in the backfield. Really excited about Cam SkatteBOOM. I know that everybody on the channel loves when I do my SkatteBOOM, so I'll do one right now before I hand it back to you, Alex. SkatteBOOM! How are you feeling about him?
Absolutely love it. I mean, SkatteBOOM has this low power-centric center of gravity, that makes it so hard not only to tackle him, but to identify where he is. He gets the ball, he sticks his foot in the ground, he's bursting through the hole. And I will say this, Anthony, we've seen some good run blocking from a guy who is trying to just work his way back into the equation, Evan Neal. Evan Neal's been playing both left and right guard. He had a nice combo block today with Jermaine Illuminor on that right side to spring free SkatteBOOM. We love to see it. That's exactly what we want to see from Evan Neal, making an impact in the run game. This Giants offense needs to open up the passing game through the run game, a little bit play action. You can't just focus on Malik Neighbors all the time. They need more of a balanced offensive system. SkatteBOOM, Tyrone Tracy, those two guys are going to be the dual-headed threat. I think Devin Singletary ultimately gets pushed into a backup role. If injuries happen, he'll obviously be promoted into more of a impact player, I guess you could say. But I think SkatteBOOM and Tracy are going to be guys that are heavily featured on this offense. And I just love the way SkatteBOOM runs. He's a ball of fire. He runs with his head on fire. He is so powerful. He doesn't go down. Elite contact balance. He's tough as nails. I want to see him run over a Cowboys linebacker in Arlington. That is all I want to see this season. It's going to happen. And I think that that's going to reinvigorate an offense that's been so down in the gutter for so many years. You underrate how important a big run, a huge hit can be to spark an offense, give them some confidence and allow them to capitalize. And I think this offense has a couple playmakers that are going to keep guys motivated and just know in the back of their heads, we always have a chance, even if, things are going poorly. It takes one play and we're back in this game.
That's exactly right. And Cam SkatteBOOM can definitely be a little bit of a spark plug for this Giants offense. I think the energy that he brings to the practice field every day, we've seen countless clips of him when he's walking out of the facility and onto the practice field, whether he's wearing Jackson Dart's jersey or if he's bashing heads with Jackson Dart. First and foremost, I love the chemistry that the two of them are developing, not only on the practice field, but also away from the practice field. They look like they're already best friends and that they've developed that camaraderie that I think will be really beneficial to them as they grow in their careers. Obviously, being in the same draft class, a quarterback and a running back, they share the backfield together. It's just the two of them back there. Having that communication and that trust in one another is crucial. And I think it's really exciting to see that Jackson Dart and Cam SkatteBOOM are developing that trust and that chemistry already. And speaking of that chemistry, the big reception that Cam SkatteBOOM made today was on a pass delivered by Jackson Dart, and that's been a trend. SkatteBOOM and Dart have been with the second and with the third team, kind of just rotating in together, but oftentimes playing alongside one another. And we've seen a lot of these passes that Dart has thrown delivered to SkatteBOOM. He had a touchdown the other day in the back corner of the end zone. He had another one that was nearly a touchdown. It was an acrobatic tipped ball, and then he just didn't get his feet in bounds, but it was still a sick catch nonetheless. And again, we see a lot of those moments from SkatteBOOM where he's getting involved as a receiver and making plays, not just on the screen. He did have a big gain on a screen today from Jackson Dart, but not only on the screen game, but also as a true receiver running routes out of the backfield. And I think that's going to make him very dynamic. Now, I'm not going to go out on a limb here and say that he's going to take the job away from Tyrone Tracy Jr. or anything like that, but just to know that the Giants have two running backs that are both capable as rushers and receivers. We know Tracy has that background as a former receiver at Purdue. Having so much versatility and deadly playmaking in that backfield, I think is going to be really valuable for this Giants offense. And it's something that was definitely missing last season, having those versatile pieces in the running back room. So, Alex, when you're looking at Cam SkatteBOOM and Jackson Dart, the trust and chemistry that they're already building and the camaraderie that they have, how excited does that make you knowing that those two are going to grow together throughout their careers here with the New York Giants?
I mean, it's extremely important, right? That's the future of this offense. Neighbors, SkatteBOOM, Jackson Dart, and Dart, you can see the way he performed yesterday, specifically, that the game is starting to slow down. You saw some of the anticipatory throws. You saw him checking down. You saw him accurately, targeting his new teammates, who he's just learning how to play with, by the way. They have no chemistry for the most part with each other. He's working with UDFAs at receiver with the second team, some of these guys, and, just getting involved with Neighbors and stuff like that. It's really more so important. Russ and Neighbors are getting a lot of reps, but Dart's getting some opportunities with the first team. Jameis Winston had a hilarious quote yesterday, and he's like, I marched my way all the way down the field, and they bring in this guy from Utah to punch in the touchdown. He talked about that with Taysom Hill with the Saints. So, it's kind of the similar way, like he's doing a lot of work. Jackson Dart comes in, makes this impact. But I also think for the most part, Dart's entire weakness coming into the NFL was just the fact that he was kind of operating in a system with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss that really predicated itself to open receivers, easy reads, really using one half of the field. He's going to have to read the whole field. He's going to have to get the ball into tight windows. And that is a learning process, especially when suddenly the NFL speeds you up quite significantly with your processing. So we're seeing glimmers already in the third, fourth day of training camp where he's starting to take those steps forward, make those throws, and fit them into tight windows and predetermine where they need to go. in a good way, not because he can't get through the progressions, but because he knows where those receivers are going to be and where the pockets and space are going to be. So we know Jackson Dart is extremely intelligent. He's only 21, maybe almost 22 years old right now. He's extremely young. We know he was one of the best, I guess in terms of when they tested him, had some of the best results of any quarterback in this draft class. He absorbs information at a very high level, and he has all the tangible traits, right? He's got a decent arm. He's got good athleticism. He's got a good head on his shoulders. Now it's just about reps. And already we're seeing progress. We saw Daniel Jones go 6 years without taking steps forward, without showing actual tangible progress. I think Jackson Dart, it's early to say, but from day 1 of camp to day 5 of camp, we've seen tangible progress in the way he is going about speeding up his processing and getting the ball out with anticipation and not just predetermination, you could say. So I do think that right now I'm encouraged. I'm excited. And the fact he's getting reps with SkatteBOOM and some of these playmakers that are going to be with him long term is extremely important for the chemistry of this team. But also financially, Dart panning out, the window for contention explodes for like 5, 6, 7, 8 years if he pans out. So we need him to take those steps forward. And I think so far, I like the plan that Brian Daboll has in place for him to get involved.
Yeah, me too. And I think, with yesterday's takeaways about Jackson Dart having his best practice on Sunday and saying that the game is slowing down for him and he's starting to see things better, I said that I want to see that kind of double the next day. I need to see him take that away. And then when the pads come on, let's see if he can continue that progress. And it seems like so far, one day of padded practices, another solid practice in the books here for Jackson Dart. He is taking it and he's learning lessons from one day and carrying them over and applying them to the next, which I think is huge. Seeing a rookie quarterback develop early on in training camp is really encouraging. Obviously, it's a long process for a rookie quarterback to get up to speed and to become a capable starter in this league. But hey, all I know is that the future is bright. It doesn't need to be right away for Jackson Dart, but the future is definitely bright. Him, SkatteBOOM, and Neighbors, as you mentioned, Alex. I mean, we've got a lot of young talent on this offense. Now it's just about putting the right pieces around them and developing them properly, which, of course, the Giants haven't been too great at over the last few years, but maybe things are on the upswing. And talking about things on the upswing, let's talk about the offensive line. Pat Leonard today said that the offensive line won more reps than it lost, said that they had a really good day and that the arrow was pointing upward. And that seemed to be the consensus among everybody who was in attendance at practice and all of the reporters who were posting videos. I saw a lot of great reps from these offensive linemen. I saw James Hudson get into a fight with Kayvon Thibodeau again. He's been fighting just about everybody at training camp, and honestly, I love it. The energy that he's brought to the practice field for the Giants is the exact kind of energy that I think they've been missing in recent years. That mentality to fight, to punch a guy in the back of the head when you're throwing him to the ground. And, I just think James Hudson, I don't want to see him on the football field this season. I hope Andrew Thomas is healthy and he starts all 17 games, but I do like James Hudson on the practice field, and I like what he's bringing to the team. And I'm really encouraged to hear that the offensive line had a solid day at practice today now that the pads have come on, because that was kind of a concern for me. You see how the defensive line, we talked about Abdul Carter getting after the quarterback at such a frequent rate through the first week or so of practice. And so I started to get concerned, like, how bad is it going to be when the pads are on and now Carter can get more physical? Is this offensive line going to be able to hold up? Well, in fact, when the pads came on, it almost evened things out. They actually were able to get a little bit more physical and slow down this defensive line, which I think really is an encouraging sign. Now, of course, we did see some clips of Dexter Lawrence manhandling some folks, and we're always going to see that because he's Dexter Lawrence. But I am encouraged, Alex. And how are you feeling, seeing that the pads came on and the offensive line fought back? They actually had a pretty solid day of practice with the pads coming on and with these defensive linemen trying to get into some fights with them. I think that's exciting stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, Jermaine Illuminor said a couple of weeks ago, just wait till the pads come on. Like, we can't properly actually block or do what we need to do without them because they use the pads as leverage and it adds a little bit more weight. So obviously these guys can't use that speed to their advantage all the time, a little bit more weight on their shoulders and just kind of room to pull and block and use. So I do think that today, really good signs. I saw JMS actually get out there on a nice bubble screen where he was able to get a block out in front, and it was a nice play. He has some athletic traits. He's faster than he is strong. So I do think that there is a lot of optimism upside for this offensive line, but most important, got to stay healthy. JMS got to take a step forward. Andrew Thomas has to stay healthy and available. Otherwise, we're back to square one. But Evan Neal taking some nice steps forward in terms of just becoming a positive in the run game at the very least. We'll see how he progresses in terms of pass protection, but Yeah, physicality, man. I want this offensive line to be mean. I want the Giants to go and play teams, and the defensive lines are afraid because they're just getting absolutely demolished and battered and bruised. In the past, it's been the opposite. They have to have some pride for themselves, right? And I think that we have some guys that, for lack of a better terms, and if you have kids in the room, they give a shit, right? Like Andrew Thomas gives a shit, Jermaine Lumador gives a shit. I think these guys care, and they want to lead a better, more tough unit that does whatever it takes to win and make an impact and protect the quarterback and open running lanes and do all the little nitty gritty stuff at a high level. So James Hudson getting involved, showcasing that strength and that kind of, I'd say, impact sets the tone for the rest of the guys. So I'd say it's a good thing. I'm happy with it. That's what the Giants paid him to come in and do, provide depth and set the tone for this offensive line and lead by example. So, definitely encouraged by that.
100%. So, yeah, I'm happy to see that the offensive line is performing well. You mentioned Evan Neal. I definitely saw some good reps from him during these training camp clips, and I'm very excited about that. We've talked a lot about Evan Neal over the last few years since we started doing this show, and we haven't really had a whole lot of positive to talk about with Evan Neal over the years. But you know what? Making this transition to guard, we did say there are reasons to be optimistic about this transition. He does have traits that should translate well to the guard spot. And so far, I think we are seeing them translate. We're seeing a lot of that power, and we're seeing a lot of that anchor in his ability at guard. And I think what we're really seeing is a mitigation of his weaknesses, right? And we always talk about how the Giants sometimes don't play guys to their strengths, and they try and just forget about their weaknesses and hope to develop those away. When I really think the right way to go about it is take the strengths and continue to develop those, get better at what you're already good at. That's how you're really going to widen the gap between you and your competitors. The Giants instead tried to improve Evan Neal where he was weak, didn't work out. Now you just play him to his strengths here at guard. You don't have to worry about his slower feet and his inability to get to the edge and slow down some of these pass rushers. Now he just plays with power and with physicality at the guard spot, and that's what he does do well. And I think that's where he can turn things around. So we'll see how much he ends up playing this season. But nevertheless, at training camp, definitely a player to keep an eye on. Definitely excited to see if Evan Neal can start to show some signs of life here throughout training camp. But let's talk about some of the players on the defensive side of the ball. Alex, obviously we discussed Abdul Carter, and we've had plenty to say about all of the pass rushers on this defensive line. But in the secondary, I think that we've seen some of these kind of lesser known players make some plays. Art Green had a one-handed interception today. Nick Jones obviously opened up training camp with the pick 6 on Jackson Dart. He's continued to make plays. Do you think that there's any sleepers in the secondary so far through training camp who have made some plays that maybe you hadn't even heard of before training camp began? Any sleepers that have been catching your eye that you think could maybe compete for a roster spot by the end of training camp?
Oof, sleepers. I like some of the, not on the defensive side, but some of the offensive guys. Bo Collins is one of them that has made an impact, and Daquan Felton with Jackson Dart, they've been making some plays. But defensively, I haven't heard much about the defensive, depth there. I know I heard some good things about our good friend Trey Hawkins, who has been working with the second team. I've heard he's had a pretty good camp so far. They like Corey Black, and that's a rookie this year. There's some guys popping out from below the surface, but I do think it's going to take a little bit more time. Really, we're going to hear about these guys in the preseason. Like that's where we're going to see these guys really stand out and make an impact during preseason games. But there's positions up for grabs here, especially like you mentioned with injuries to guys like Bryce Ford Wheaton on the special teams. That's where they're going to make that impact. That's where they're going to claw their way onto this roster. But so far, heard some good things about Trey Hawkins. Aside from him, if anyone else has any names, drop them in the YouTube comment section. We could take a look at them in future episodes, or at least just keep an eye on them as we progress through here. But another guy, not low key at all, who's been having an excellent start to training camp is Drew Phillips. So just want to give him a shout out.
Yeah, Drew Phillips and Tyler Newbin, they've both made a lot of plays on the ball. Both players that the Giants drafted last year in the second and third round, respectively. Very good prospects coming out and very good impact players, really, as rookies, now making progress and making a lot of plays at training camp so far. Really like the youth in the secondary and love what we're seeing. So before we wrap, though, Alex, I do want to talk about one instance that happened during training camp today, which was Brian Dable tearing into players. We haven't seen that from him so far through training camp. Maybe there was a little flash of it during OTAs, got a little bit fiery at one point, but today he really lit up. He dropped several F-bombs. He cursed out the offensive line and the tight ends because there were a lot of pre-snap penalties, some false starts, some illegal shifts. We saw a lot of that last year, a lot of pre-snap penalties. And who gets the blame for it? Not so much the offensive line, but really it ends up going to Brian Daboll. Fans became very critical of him because of the lack of discipline that was being demonstrated by the offensive line, or really just by the offense last season with all of those pre-snap penalties. And so far through training camp, there have been some instances of pre-snap penalties from the offensive line and the defensive line. And Daboll finally today had enough of it, tore into them, cursed them all out, and really laid down the law. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I'm excited to hear this. I think that Daboll needs to do a good job of keeping his temper in check, which he did a better job of last year than he did the season prior, in my opinion. But I still need him to be disciplinary. He still needs to step in and knock some sense into these guys every now and then. So what's your takeaway from Brian Daboll finally losing his cool at training camp?
Well, one thing that players can control, sometimes you can't control how fast you run, how hard you hit, these are things that are physical traits, but one thing you can control is mental, mistakes. There should be no mental mistakes. And Daboll has to make it known, if you're going to make a mental mistake, you are going to be reprimanded. You are going to maybe lose a snap, lose some playing time, like if you're consistently doing that, obviously. But I think that there has to be some sort of fear of making that mistake. If you are not afraid to make a mistake, not afraid to make a mental mistake, which are unacceptable at the highest level, good teams do not make mental mistakes. You can lose a game, because you went from 3rd and 2 to 3rd and 7 because you had a pre-snap false start, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you can lose a game if it's 4th and 2 and you have a 35-yard field goal and you have a false start or something happens, and now it's a 35, 40, 45-yard field goal and you miss it because of that extra yardage because the wind is blowing this. You know what I mean? Like, football is a game of inches. Mental mistakes decide games for you at the highest level. The Giants cannot afford to have these mistakes. They need to be afraid to make them. And I think that Brian Daboll is setting that tone and at least being strategic with where he's channeling that anger. And I think it's a fine thing to be angry about things that you absolutely can control. Mental mistakes and lapses are absolutely one of them.
I 100% agree. And again, it does fall on the head coach to get those things right for the players and make sure that they are disciplined properly. And then it's just about execution for the players. But I am happy to hear that Brian Daboll is being disciplinary at training camp. I think that's important. And I think that's something that we need to see more of going forward. I think he caught a lot of criticism last year because there was a quote unquote country club vibe at practice at times. Things were very relaxed last year. And I think that did show up during the season when the Giants honestly entered the regular season seemingly unprepared for week 1. But now hopefully they'll have the preparation in place. They'll have that discipline in place. And I'm really hopeful that we get a better season. So I can't believe this. We went through the whole takeaways. We didn't really even mention Russell Wilson and Malik Neighbors. But don't worry, guys. It's more of the same. They connected on some great passes today. Their timing is impeccable, and the chemistry is definitely strong between the two of them. So a lot of great stuff, a lot of positives today, really not a ton of negatives, but of course we're going to continue to update you guys on training camp throughout the week, and we will be there on Thursday and Friday. So come say what's up to myself and to Alex. Should be a lot of fun on Thursday and Friday. So see you there. In the meantime, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go New York Giants.